Well, we had a feeling that this day was coming, and now the time has finally come. The official end of the Nintendo Switch era. What is up, folks, and welcome back to the channel once again. In this video, I'll be going over a retrospective of the system, and we'll also be highlighting some of the major titles from each year of the Switch era. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the very beginning of the Switch era. The Nintendo Switch was first released to the public on March 3rd, 2017. This system was somewhat of a contingency plan for Nintendo following the massive failure of the Wii U, which had just been released in late 2012. And one main reason, of course, that the Wii U did flop was because, well, it wasn't really marketed very well. But anyway, this is a Switch video, not a Wii U video. Anyway, the launch lineup wasn't exactly the best for the Switch. It wasn't exactly the best batch of games compared to previous systems, but it wasn't entirely terrible either. The game that essentially carried the Switch for its first several weeks on the market was The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Now, this game, when it came out on Switch on the same day as the console itself, it also released on the exact, released for the Wii U simultaneously on the exact same day. But the Switch version was the far better version, not just in my eyes, but in the eyes of a lot of other Nintendo fans as well. Now, Snipper Clips wasn't exactly the best, but I suppose there have been worse choices for launch games. There was also ARMS, which wasn't too bad, but it didn't have the lasting appeal that Breath of the Wild did. The same could be said for Super Bomberman R. As for 1-2 Switch, well, we're not even going to discuss that one because that game was absolutely terrible. So while the launch lineup for the Switch wasn't the best, it wasn't exactly the worst either. Then, in April of 2017, a deluxe version of Mario Kart 8 released for the Switch. This game brought over all the tracks and DLC content from the Wii U version, and recently had even more tracks added in both 2022 and 2023 via the Booster Pass. This is easily the #1 launch window game for the Switch, in my opinion, and Nintendo fans obviously agree, because this version is the best-selling Mario Kart of all time, and has broken all kinds of sales records. And actually, as of the time I'm recording this video, the game has sold over 72 million units when the Wii U sales are added in as well. I have a feeling that some of those records may be threatened by Mario Kart World, but we'll have to see what happens. During the summer of 2017, Splatoon 2 released for the Switch as a follow-up to the original game on the Wii U. Now, ever since Splatoon's introduction to the Nintendo universe, this has been a very popular series. While it does have a story mode like the first one did, the real meat and potatoes here is the online play that the Splatoon games are best known for. This is one of the more competitive games out there, and some people are so dedicated to this game that they go out of their way to reach the maximum level possible. In fact, my friend Video Game Fan 1999 is a huge fan of this series, and I played it with him online on occasion. This is a great entry in a very good series. And actually, going back to the original Splatoon for a second, there's actually one thing I do want to point out before I go to my next topic. Around the night that the Wii U servers got shut down, Video Game Fan 1999 I actually got to witness Video Game Fan 1999 reached level 50 in the original Splatoon game. So that was a nice accomplishment for him. Now, back to the topic at hand. The big title for the first year of the Switch that really got everybody's attention was that year's holiday game, Super Mario Odyssey, released in October of 2017 and served as the big 3D Mario title for the platform. All of the kingdoms that can be visited in this game are really good, but the amount of moons that can be collected is a bit overwhelming. The maximum is 999, but I don't think I ever got that high in any of my playthroughs of this game. Still a lot of fun, and hopefully we get another quality Mario title like this on the Switch too, which I'm pretty sure we will. Finally, to close out the first year of the Switch, Xenoblade 2 released at the very start of December 2017. This title is, of course, the sequel to the very first Xenoblade game that originally released on the Nintendo Wii. The cast of characters in this one, however, is different than the first title. While this game has a lot of action in it, it's also a very long game, just like the first one was. Then again, considering that this game is an RPG and those types of games usually tend to be long, it's essentially par for the course. If you're a fan of this series, then this would obviously be the game for you. Another banger for year one, in my opinion. The second year of the Switch in 2018 was when things really began to pick up steam for the console. Among the releases in year two was a re-release of Hyrule Warriors. For those unfamiliar with Warriors games, it's a hack and slash game with the objective of defeating hordes of enemies at once. And I should know this because I've played both the Hyrule Warriors series as well as the Fire Emblem Warriors series. Yes, there was a Fire Emblem Warriors game that released on the Switch in 2017, but I kind of neglected to mention that because, well, I didn't really care too much for that game. But for Hyrule Warriors, you use characters from the Zelda universe to take out the enemies. A very fun title if you're a Zelda fan. Here also saw another port in the form of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. This was a port of the original 3DS release from 2014 and contained most of the same levels from that version. For the Switch release, however, some additional content inspired by Mario Odyssey was thrown in as a way of keeping things fresh for players. A fun little puzzle-solving game for those who are into that genre. But even if you're not, it's still worth checking out at the very least. 2018 also saw a new entry in the Mario Tennis series called Mario Tennis Aces. This title incorporated the story mode that was okay at best, but you can also play normally with all the different tournaments the game has to offer. However, this game was also guilty of starting the entire practice of releasing it now and then adding things later for all the Mario sports titles. So if you thought that practice would be a one-off for just this game only, oh, you are very, very much mistaken. A new title of the Kirby series launched in the second year called Kirby Star Allies. In this title, players could be allies with other characters to defeat enemies and solve the puzzles, hence the title of the game. While the game is a lot of fun to play, the main problem with it is that it leans too heavily on the easy side of the difficulty curve, thus allowing you to rack up a high number of lives. Another issue with a ridiculously easy game is that it can get boring after a while. Some of you may have differing opinions than I do, and there's nothing really wrong with that. The fall of 2018 saw the release of the first of 3 Mario Party titles that we would get on the Switch. The first of these titles was Super Mario Party, which released in October of that year. While this game was a solid return to the classic Mario Party formula, it wasn't without its big issues. The one big thing that hampered this game was that you were forced to use your Joy-Cons for everything. And I do mean everything. You even had to use them for the mini-games, which I thought was pretty stupid. It wouldn't be so bad if only a small sample of the mini-games required this, but the fact that you have to use them for every single game, including the regular board play, means that there is no possible way for you to take this game on the go with you. And for a system that prides itself on being able to take play with you anywhere, the forced Joy-Con use in this title kind of defeats that purpose, not gonna lie. Not a terrible game by any means, but it could have been so much better. Now, what would a Nintendo console be without a Pokemon game? Well, in November of 2018, the Switch received its first pair of mainline Pokemon titles, entitled Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. These games served as enhanced remakes of Pokemon Yellow, which had first released way back in 1999. These titles were mainly the same as the original, but with a few differences. One difference was that in addition to Pikachu, Eevee also became a starter Pokemon in this game. Also, the modern version of the experience share is used here. For those who are uneducated as to how it works, at the moment, the main Pokemon in your party that battles gets the full amount of experience points, while everyone else gets half. The benefit of this is that it cuts down on grinding significantly. However, there is no way to turn it off, which is a bit disappointing. As far as which Pokemon appear here, you will only see the original 150 plus Meltan and Melmetal. However, every move from generations 1 through 7 is accessible in this game, which gives a lot of options for strategy. These titles are okay at best, but there have been worse games than this. The second year of the Switch closed out with a huge bang in the form of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which released in December of 2018. This game brought together a majority of characters from various Nintendo universes. In addition to the classic cast of Mario characters, you also had characters from other Nintendo universes such as Kirby, Link, the Splatoon Inklings, and Pikachu from the Pokemon franchise. You also have a whole bunch of third-party characters in here too, such as Sonic the Hedgehog, Sephiroth from Final Fantasy, and one of the big ones, Sora from Kingdom Hearts. If you want not just a great fighting game, but also an action-packed party game, then Ultimate is definitely a title I can recommend. It also has a cool story mode called World of Light, where you can unlock any characters that you don't have. No further explanation of this game is really needed at this point, considering it's been out for 6.5 years now. I have no doubt that a new Smash will come for Switch 2, unless Nintendo wants to milk it even further and sell a deluxe version of Ultimate at full price, but that's not really a debate that I want to bring up right now. To start off year 3 in January 2019, the Switch received a port of a Wii U title, and in this case, it was New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. And let's just say the reception of this game was very negative. First off, people were extremely tired of the new Super Mario Bros. Series at this point and didn't really feel like spending the money to play this game a second time. Also, you mainly had the same content from the original game as well as the Super Luigi U mode, but aside from that, the only new thing for this version was the ability to play as Nabbit. Yeah, that's literally it. Let's just move swiftly along, shall we? March of 2019 saw the release of Yoshi's Crafted World. This is a cute little platformer that has an arts and crafts theme to it. While it's a charming game to play, it has the same problem that Kirby Star Allies did, in that it was very easy. That doesn't mean the game is light on content, though. There's plenty of side missions to do in addition to the main stages, so despite the easy difficulty, it can still provide hours of fun and enjoyment. The 2019 summer season brought a mix of creative and action-packed titles to the platform. To start off the summer period, Super Mario Maker 2 was released. The original Super Mario Maker originally released for both the Wii U and 3DS simultaneously and proved to be extremely popular, so it's no surprise that there's a sequel for this game. The idea is the same, in which players can make their own levels based off the style of both classic and modern Mario games. While some of the created levels are fun to play, there are also the ones that are insanely evil, so you need to watch out for those. The series seems to have died off in popularity recently, though, so that doesn't bode well for the chances of a Switch 2 version. You never know with Nintendo, though. Also among the summer releases in 2019 was Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. While this game was developed by Nintendo themselves, they did publish the game, so for the purposes of this video, we're going to count it. All sorts of superheroes appear here, such as Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, and many others. For fans of the superhero genre, it's an awesome game, and the visual sequence that occurs during the credits sets up nicely for a 4th entry, which we have yet to receive. Maybe we'll get that eventual 4th game on Switch 2, but I have no idea if that series has been discontinued or not. I guess we'll know over the course of the next generation. Another cool summer release that year was Astral Chain. This action-packed title has players in the role of a police officer investigating mysterious goings-on in the world. The game is also set pretty far in the future, so who knows what the actual world will look like by then. All I know is that it will look far different than the world we have right now. Maybe we'll eventually get those flying hover cars at some point. Who knows? The summer season of 2019 is also a good one for Fire Emblem fans, as Fire Emblem Three Houses released. This is certainly one of the longer games in the series, if not the longest, as it requires loads of playing time just to even get to the end. But even when you finish one house, you're not entirely done, because then you have to go through the other 2 houses that you didn't pick originally. Hence the title, Three Houses. It's a pretty good game, but a bit too long for my liking. 2019 also saw the Switch receive its first hardware revision, as the Switch Lite was introduced in early fall of this year. The Lite is basically a handheld-only version of the console, which is great for traveling purposes, but it also takes away some features that the original had. First off, a Lite cannot be hooked up to the television, so don't even bother to try that. Second, a few Switch games are unplayable on this model due to how it's designed. For example, Super Mario Party can't be used on the Lite due to the forced use of the Joy-Cons. The plus side, however, is that it's a more budget-friendly option if you don't want to shell out the money for the original Switch. It's still a pretty good system overall, though, and one that I believe right now retails for about $200 in American money. Maybe a little less. So, yeah, definitely a good budget option. Finally, 2019 ended with the release of a new pair of Pokemon games called Pokemon Sword and Shield. These titles caused a bit of of controversy when they came out, as it was the first time that they weren't able to include every single Pokemon in existence in the game. And part of that is mainly because, well, the Pokedex has gotten quite big at this point, but that decision resulted in a lot of fan favorite Pokemon being cut. Kudos for keeping Pikachu in, though, as I love him very much. Year 4 in 2020 started off kind of on the slow side, but March of that year saw the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons. This game arrived at pretty much the perfect time because its arrival on Switch also happened to coincide with the start of the COVID pandemic. Because of this, everyone was basically stuck indoors and not allowed to go anywhere. Therefore, the game provided an opportunity for people to hang out with each other without leaving their living rooms. How was this accomplished, you ask? By checking out different islands made by the people playing the game. The type of islands people were making obviously depended on their likes and interests. While I did pick this up at launch, I kinda got bored of it quickly and thus eliminated it from my collection. At least I gave it an honest shot, though. Animal Crossing was not the only March title of this year, however. Prior to the release of New Horizons, a remake of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team came out. And this was about 2 weeks before New Horizons came out, to be exact. While it was a pretty solid title for being a spin-off, it can't hold the candle to the main series games. What makes this title good for replayability is that the dungeon layouts are completely randomized with each new plane. It's a decent game, but I still prefer the mainline titles over this. In the spring of 2020, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was released. As the title implies, this is essentially a remaster of the first Xenoblade game, but has some new content to go along with everything else. I haven't really played too much of this game, but I do know that it is an absolute masterpiece of a title. Definitely check this out if you're into the Xenoblade franchise. So, who remembers the minigame compilation Clubhouse Games? Yeah, that used to be a thing on the Nintendo DS, and mid-2020 they decided to bring this back for the Nintendo Switch. There's a lot of fun minigames that you can play here, with one of my personal favorites being baseball. Also, fun fact, N-Man64 and I played this together in a recent episode of Mike and Mark After Dark on his channel, and we had a lot of fun. Pretty solid game, so give this a whirl if you haven't yet done so. The summer of that year brought about the first of 2 DLC waves for Pokemon Sword and Shield, which added some popular Pokemon that weren't in the game originally back in. It wasn't that bad of a DLC pack, but it could have been better in my opinion. And to be fair, this pair of games was the first time that Game Freak was trying out DLC content. Previously, they would release a third version that not only mirrored the gameplay of the original, but also added extra features that resulted in the third version essentially serving as a deluxe version. I would take third versions over DLC any day, but sadly, I have no control over what happens. In July of 2020, the Switch received a brand new entry in the long-running Paper Mario franchise entitled Paper Mario The Origami King. While this game isn't perfect, it's leaps and bounds better than Color Splash. It has the clever and witty writing that the original Paper Mario games have, but it also has some moments that will make you feel very emotional inside. Case in point, the scene where Bobby the Bomb explodes into oblivion, much to the chagrin of Olivia, who I'd like to point out is one of the more adorable characters in that game. Even Bowser plays a bit of a role here, as he does a bit of role reversal and ends up becoming Mario's ally instead of his enemy. Nice to have a rare instance of Mario and Bowser teaming up together, even if it is only on a temporary basis. The fall of 2020 marked a very important anniversary for a certain plumber. This period was the 35th anniversary of the Super Mario franchise, so naturally Nintendo decided to do a couple special releases in honor of the occasion. One of those releases was Super Mario 35, which was a battle royale version of the original Super Mario Bros. Game, where you would play against 34 other people. Lots of fun, but sadly that game is no longer playable. It's a shame too, because that game is one of the best things that Nintendo has ever done. However, another release that happened at this point was Super Mario 3D All-Stars. This title was a compilation of some of Mario's previous 3D outings. In this case, the compilation consisted of Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. Fun fact time again, out of all 3 of those Mario games that they've listed, Mario 64 is the only one that is currently available as part of the Nintendo Switch Online service. I have a feeling that Sunshine will likely get added to the GameCube NSO on the new console, and if the service ever adds Wii titles, then Mario Galaxy is a sure bet to be included at that point. Speaking of Mario Galaxy, where's Mario Galaxy 3? Come on, Nintendo. We're waiting for that. October 2020 saw a deluxe version of Pikmin 3 released onto the Switch. This was one of the many games that didn't sell too well on the Wii U, and that's because of the fact that, as I explained earlier, the Wii U itself was a complete flop. But while this title did enjoy slightly better sales numbers than the Switch, it's sadly not a series that a lot of people care for. And that's kind of a shame because it's a pretty cute series, too. Finally, the 2020 year finished off with a pair of releases. One of those was the second wave of DLC content for Pokemon Sword and Shield. This DLC pack essentially finished up the main game's story, and while it wasn't too bad of a DLC pack, it still could have been done much better. Here it is. Yeah. Could have been done much better. That's just my personal opinion, however. The other release was a brand new Hyrule Warriors game entitled Age of Calamity. This title serves as a prequel to Breath of the Wild, which means that the events of this game take place before the events of Breath of the Wild. For those who like hack and slash games, this is another really fun one. I've played this myself, and it's very enjoyable. Now, you're probably wondering, oh, Mark, I thought you didn't do Zelda. Well, you'd be correct, but it's the mainline games specifically that I don't do. However, I do like the Warriors titles. They can be hard at times, but they're still fun to play. A great title to close out 2020. 2021 started off with another port of a Wii U game. This time, Super Mario 3D World was the lucky winner, with some quality of life changes from the original game. One of these changes is that if you die at any point after getting one of the green stars, you keep them no matter what, as opposed to having to get them all over again on the Wii U. That makes progression so much easier. This version of the game also added an extra side mode called Bowser's Fury, which allows you to roam around an open world as Cat Mario and do all sorts of cool stuff. You also have another rare team up here as Mario and Bowser Jr. join forces. Not too often that those two join together, but if it means getting Bowser out of a pickle, then I guess it's worth it. April 2021 saw another Battle Royale type game release in the form of Pac-Man 99. This game plays similar to Mario 35, but with Pac-Man himself. There's also more players involved, which means more competition. I love this game a lot, but like with Mario 35, this game can no longer be played, which is unfortunate. It was fun while it lasted, though. Near the end of April, Pokemon Snap was revived and brought to the Switch in the form of New Pokemon Snap. Just like in the original Pokemon Snap for the N64, actually, let me start it again. Just like in the original Pokemon Snap for the N64, you take photos of various Pokemon with the idea of getting as high a score as possible based on how Pokemon poses and various other factors. An okay game, but can get kind of boring at times, which is why I've yet to do a Let's Play of this title. Will I ever play it on this channel? Probably not. In the second half of May, the Switch received another re-release. This one, however, was from the 3DS. We got a port of the quirky but hilarious Miitopia. What's really fun about this game is getting to make custom Miis and using those over the course of your adventure in this title. The dialogue in this can be hilarious at times, and there's also an extremely overpowered horse. Enough said. June 2021 saw another Mario sports title come to Switch. This time it was Golf's turn as Mario Golf Super Rush hit the links. Like with Mario Tennis, this game has a story mode. There's also a variety of different courses for you to play on, each one of them having their own set of challenges. A fun title for those who enjoy golf. But even if you don't like golf, it's still a fun pick up and play title for whenever you're in the mood to play something. July 2021 brought about another remaster, specifically an HD version of The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. While the core game is mainly the same as its Nintendo Wii counterpart, they at least give us the option of whether or not to use motion controls, which is a very good change. In the original, you had no choice but to play motion controls due to the Wii remote. So to have an option this time is a huge sigh of relief. Another fun title, especially for the Zelda community. September 2021 brought about a new WarioWare title called Get It Together. This series originally started off on the Game Boy Advance and is known for having lots of fun micro mini games to play. They're not easy games to clear, however, as you have to be quick. It's a lot of fun, but it also requires patience and skill to get perfect. This type of game isn't exactly for everyone, but it's still enjoyable. once the 2021 calendar flipped to October, one of my personal favorite Switch games arrived. Granted, it didn't arrive until near the end of the month, but it's still a very awesome game. I am talking about none other than Mario Party Superstars. This game fixes the main issue that Super Mario Party had, which was that you weren't forced to use Joy-Cons anymore. However, this title was very bare bones on content. Why do I say that? Well, you had 5 very good boards to pull from, all of which were from the Nintendo 64 era. You have Yoshi's Tropical Island and Peach's Birthday Cake from Mario Party 1, Horrorland and Spaceland from Mario Party 2, and Woody Woods from Mario Party 3. Now, the boards are great, don't get me wrong about that, but the extra content is kind of lacking. You just have a simple minigame mode, and, well, that's really about it. Still a better game than Super Mario Party, though. The month of October also saw the release of another hardware revision in the form of the Switch OLED. While the design was more or less the same as the regular Switch, the screen size on this model is slightly bigger than the original. The battery life in this version is also improved over the original unit. The downside is that it means a higher price, but the upside is that the quality of the games is slightly better than on the original Switch. To finish 2021, we received another remake. Which game got the remake treatment this time? None other than Pokemon Diamond and Pearl from the Nintendo DS. And, oh boy, did this ever cause quite the stir. First off, anytime you remake an older Pokemon game for a newer generation, one of the most logical things to do is include new features as well as some of the new Pokemon that have been added since the release of the original. That is not what this remake did. They essentially copy and pasted from the original game and added no new features at all. Not only that, but the game's Pokédex only included Pokemon from the first 4 generations, even though the franchise was up to Generation 8 at this point. In fact, the only notable change for this game was incorporating the modern version of the Experience Share item, and that's literally it. Needless to say, these remakes didn't go over well with the fan base at all. But at least we didn't have to use HMs anymore, so that's a plus. Let's hope this will be a learning lesson for when and if we eventually get remakes of Black and White. While 2021 ended with a not-so-good Pokemon game, 2022 started off with a very good Pokemon game, as Pokemon Legends Arceus was released at the end of January. This game takes players to the Hisui region, which was a much older version of Sinnoh. As further proof of this, the male and female characters in the game are ancient versions of their modern counterparts. The difficulty curve in this game is much higher than your standard Pokemon game, but it's still very enjoyable. Just don't take too much fall damage. February may have been a quiet month for the Switch in 2022 in terms of major Nintendo releases, but March was the opposite, as this month saw the release of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This title marked the first foray into 3D for Nintendo's Little Pink Puffball, and it did not disappoint. Lots of vast areas to explore in each of the stages, and there's also a bit of a progression system here, where you have to rescue a certain number of Waddle Dees in order to unlock the boss fights in each of the worlds. I believe this also applies to a couple of the regular stages, but it's been a hot minute since I played this title, which means I'm either not remembering it correctly or just playing along in general. For what it's worth, though, this game is a blast to play. The following month saw the Switch receive a follow-up to the popular Wii Sports titles. Introducing Nintendo Switch Sports. This game is one of those that's usually popular with families as well as guests that visit. You have your standard bog fare sports here, such as bowling, tennis, badminton, and more. While it's a really fun game, it's also annoyingly another one of those that falls victim to the practice of releasing it now and adding more stuff later. More recent updates to this game, though, have added in both golf and basketball. They're both fun sports, don't get me wrong, but they're both sports that I think should have been included in the game at launch. Remember back in the 90s and even through the early 2000s when games would ship and release entirely complete without having to rely on internet downloads to get extra stuff? A part of me wishes that we could go back to that. The month of May didn't feature any Nintendo-related releases, but they made up for that the following month with 2 titles. The first of them was a new Mario Strikers game, which, I will say right now, is the worst of the Mario Sports games on the system. Barely any content as well as drip-feeding new character additions. No wonder many people dropped this game relatively quickly. If you want a really good Mario Strikers game, I would probably recommend either the GameCube one or the Wii one. Don't play the Switch version. Just just no. The other June release for 2022 was another Warriors title, but this time featuring the Fire Emblem characters. The game is entitled Fire Emblem Free Hopes, and as you probably expect, the events of this game are tied directly to the events of Free Houses. Really fun title for those who enjoy the Warriors games. Didn't make it to the end of this one, but I got pretty far, so that's definitely something to be proud of. The second half of the 2022 year started off on a not so good note for me personally, as I contracted COVID for the first time, which sucked. While unfortunate, it's thankfully the only time that I've gotten it. But later in the month, we had something more positive than that. A brand new entry in the Xenoblade Chronicles series arrived called Xenoblade Chronicles Free. This is one of the most beautiful video games I've ever played. Even though I'm not a huge fan of the series, this game kept me hooked from start to finish, meaning that it's the only game in this franchise that I've actually beaten. An awesome game that should be enjoyed by everybody. Several weeks after this, Splatoon 3 released. While the core gameplay is the same, some of the maps are a bit different. There would also be Splatfests every month, with each one having a different theme. Some of the themes are pretty cool, but others aren't even close to exciting. I do still play this some of the time, but I think people want to move on to a new Splatoon title at this point. Well, I guess it's obvious that Nintendo definitely had an obsession with the number 3, because Bayonetta 3 graced the platform in October 2022. This action-packed title is one of the more mature games that Nintendo has put out, and if you like action, then this is definitely for you. A lot of controversy surrounded this game during its release cycle, mainly because of the whole situation with Bayonetta's voice actress, but that's a can of worms that I'd rather stay away from. Highly recommended if you're a gamer that loves action. And of course, to close out 2022, we got a brand new pair of Pokemon games entitled Scarlet and Violet. These games ran like absolute garbage when they released, but that could be attributed to the fact that the hardware in the Switch was pretty old at this point in the console's lifespan. A huge patch was promised to fix the problems, but that never happened. If you look past the issues though, it's still a really good Pokemon game. Not to mention that you have control over where you want to go and what you want to do. Probably the best Pokemon title of the entire Switch generation at this point. Well, we now arrive at 2023, which was year number 7 for the little console that could. The Switch started losing a bit of steam in this year, but that didn't stop Nintendo from putting out another solid batch of releases. The year began with the release of Fire Emblem Engage in January. Another pretty good title in the franchise, but if these games would get more sales, then maybe we'd get much more attention than it currently does. February 2023 brought about something that's more up my alley, which was a deluxe version of Kirby's Return to Dreamland. This version came with new content and even a new story featuring Magolor. Among the modern changes here is that your life count stays intact during the game, even when you turn it off. That alone makes this easier to go through than its original Wii version. As for the Magolor story, I have yet to check that out, and I'm not sure when or if I'll get around to it. But this wasn't the only February release that year. A Master of Metroid Prime released out of nowhere, which got fans very excited. This game is far more for the hardcore gamer instead of the casuals. Really fun to play though. March of 2023 saw another new Bayonetta title called Cereza and the Lost Demons. This spin-off title served as a prequel to the main series and basically explained how our title character got her witch powers. A decent small title that I think is worth your time. In April 2023, we got a Game Boy Advance remake as Advance Wars 1 and 2 arrived. This game originally had been intended for a 2021 release, but was originally delayed. Well, first off, the first delay was to apply some extra spit and polish. It was then rescheduled for a spring 2022 release, but real-world events that were going on at the time involving 2 certain countries, which I will not mention here, forced Nintendo to have to delay the game a second time. But even when it finally came out, it still didn't get a whole lot of attention. I think one major reason for that has to do with the big title that released a few weeks after this. May 2023 saw the Switch receive another major Zelda title and a brand new one at that. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom released to very positive reviews and was even nominated for that year's major Game of the Year award. This title took players back to Hyrule for a brand new story, and new features were also added. This game is easily the #1 release of the 2023 calendar year. While May had a very good release, June had a not so good one. So, you remember in 2017 when 1-2 Switch released as a launch title, and it was so bad. Well, that's the type of game that you would think should get a sequel, right? Right? Well, Nintendo apparently thought otherwise, and we ended up getting everybody 1-2 Switch. And let's just say this was even worse than the first one. Now, thankfully, Nintendo had the decency to price it at $30 US, or roughly 40 Canadian. But there are much better games out there than this slop. Do not waste your time with this one. The following month saw a brand new Pikmin game release called Pikmin 4. This game had been rumored for years at this point, and for it to finally see the light of day in the summer of 2023 made the Pikmin fan base very happy. In addition to a new story, there's also a mode that allows you to play the storyline from the classic Pikmin titles. A best of both worlds, essentially. August didn't see any new releases, but Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Trading Card Game were added to the Nintendo Switch Online, so that's pretty cool. And also the DLC packs for Scarlet and Violet were also released in 2023, so there's also that. The F-Zero fans really had it good in September when Nintendo released F-Zero 99. This game is very much similar to the other 99 type games that preceded this, but with assets for the Super Nintendo version of F-Zero. While this was fun at first, I don't think anyone really plays this anymore. Quite a shame, because it had a lot of potential. October saw the release of a brand new 2D Mario adventure, and thankfully this one did not carry the new Super Mario Bros. Branding, as Nintendo finally realized, maybe we shouldn't call this new Super Mario Bros. Because, people don't want to see that branding anymore. So, they chose to call it Super Mario Bros. Wonder instead. This game was a big breath of fresh air that the 2D Mario series needed, and introduced a new mechanic called the Wonder Flower. Once those are touched, just about anything can happen, whether it's pipes moving on their own or a bunch of plants singing together in unison. One of the best games ever made, so definitely check this one out. Finally, 2023 ended with a surprise remake that nobody had expected. A remade version of Super Mario RPG graced the Nintendo Switch as the big holiday game of the year. This title had originally released for the Super Nintendo in 1996, and it was an instant classic. Even this remake version is a hit, and what makes it easier than the original is that you have a difficulty option at the beginning of the game. One of the best titles to ever grace the system. Another must-play. 2024 saw releases become a bit less frequent compared to prior years, and that's likely because the console was entering year number 8. Now, previous history would indicate that 2024 should be the time for a brand new Nintendo console, but Nintendo wasn't quite ready for that just yet. The first 2 months of 2024 were fairly quiet, but March saw the release of a Mario Universe title with Princess Peach in the starring role. The game is called Princess Peach Showtime and has a theater setting to it. Peach has lots of different identities in this game, from simple things like baking to more action-packed roles like being a dashing thief. While the game is charming, it's way too easy. I think a younger audience would probably have more fun with this game. After nothing of note in April, another GameCube classic graced the Switch in the form of a remake. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door arrived on the hybrid system in May and was an instant hit. People say that Thousand Year Door is the best game in the Paper Mario series, and after playing through this version, I would have to agree. Witty dialogue and classic writing makes this game easy for me to recommend. One game that I probably can't recommend, however, is Luigi's Mansion 2. An HD version of the 3DS title came out in June, but sadly received absolutely no modern quality of life changes. That's bad, because in the original you had to start the stage again from the beginning if you died. This was something I had hoped that they would change with the Switch release, only to be ignored entirely, thus making the game just as hard as the original. I just hope that the inevitable Luigi's Mansion 4 will be easier than this one was. In July, Nintendo decided to go the route of nostalgia by bringing back Nintendo World Championships. Here you try to complete a series of challenges from various NES games in the fastest time possible. If you're really good, then you can show off your skills in a tournament, which is pretty cool. If you like retro games, then definitely check this out. September 2024 saw the release of a new 2D Zelda called Echoes of Wisdom. Like with Showtime earlier in the year, the game made history as the first time in the Zelda series where you can actually play as Zelda herself, which is pretty nice. Not my type of game though. October saw the Mario Party series get its first Switch entry, and needless to say, it is easily the best one of the Switch era for this franchise. Super Mario Party Jamboree was released to positive reviews, and it also fixes the major problem that the previous two entries had, which was lack of content. This game has plenty of content to pull from in the form of 7 boards, 5 new and 2 classic ones. They're all really fun, especially Rainbow Galleria. There's also lots of nice side modes here too. You can compete in a Decathlon, try to take down Bowser and Kaboom Squad, and so much more. In my opinion, this is the definitive Mario Party to play on Switch. Now, although it does lose a bit of points over the fact that there is forced Joy-Con use here as well, but thankfully it's only for a small sample of the mini games and not all of them. So that is definitely a big plus. And then 2024 ended with another Mario RPG. This time the lucky winner was Mario and Luigi Brothership. A lot of people thought that the series was done after Alpha Dream went bankrupt following poor sales from the Bowser's Inside Story remake. Fortunately, another developer snapped it up and provided us with another quality title in this long-standing franchise that originally started in the early 2000s. My only gripe with this game is that it's way too long. And by way too long, I mean like maybe at least 50 hours? Still loads of fun though. And that is it for our comprehensive look at each full year of the Switch era. While we did get some okay re-releases in the first half of 2025 in the forms of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD and a remake of Xenoblade X, thus officially putting every Xenoblade game on the system, I think everyone is ready to move on and enjoy new games. And starting tomorrow, we will officially have that enjoyment with the release of both the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World. So with that, I thank you all for watching and listening. Hard to believe that we're about to enter a whole new generation of Nintendo gaming, but beginning tomorrow, that's exactly what will be happening. And not only that, I won't have to hear about any Switch free rumors for quite some time. So, that's all from me here. I will catch you all in the next one.